just 1 hour of recording that like our social team has enough for the entire month. Like we have at least 2 posts a week for the rest of the month out of one hour conversation. So it seems like a lot of work, but it makes it a lot easier.
Hey everyone, I'm here with Kendall, head of community at Riverside, talking about why video matters and how to get more of it for B2B marketing, especially on social. Bottom line, you don't need big budget videos. Honest storytelling builds trust and sparks engagement. All right, let's get into it.
Hello, Kendall.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm excited to chat with you. And as I was mentioning in our pre-chat, having someone from Riverside is awesome because I've been using Riverside for maybe 3-4 episodes of this Marketers Do Coffee series, and I'm becoming a big fan. So
I'm glad that we can make this connection, and also glad that you're loving your Riverside experience so far. It's good to hear.
yeah, so far so good. So this is actually my goal of the conversation, is to tell other people how Riverside, but also just video in general, might be something that they're overthinking, and maybe they seems difficult, but you guys are making it a lot easier for people who, they want to record a podcast, they want to do an interview series, and really you're making it easy and you're making it accessible to more people. So that's why I'm excited to hear from you, because I'm sure you chat with lots of folks out there who are using your tool and doing cool things with it.
Yes, definitely, especially marketers. I mean, I think that this is such a new frontier for marketers. As more platforms are pushing video, I think that it could be pretty intimidating. But I think that there are a lot of tools like Riverside, but also a lot of things that you can keep in mind to make it a lot less intimidating for you. So excited to kind of run through some of them. Yeah.
So before we get started, I actually thought your background was quite interesting from what you shared with me, what I can see. So you were doing political coverage in your past life, is that right?
Yes. I'm a recovering political journalist.
Okay.
So yeah, I was a political journalist for Politico, for Bloomberg News, and for NBC. And for Bloomberg was definitely like the coolest, only because I was covering the presidential campaign in 2016. So I was living out of a suitcase, following the campaigns. That was Trump versus Clinton, so like a crazy campaign to cover. Yeah, and it was really an interesting time, and there was really nothing like it. So people are always kind of interested in the idea of me going from journalism over to community management.
Exactly. That was my question. Yeah. How did you make that shift?
Yeah, it's a bit of a sharp turn. Yeah, so there are a few factors, but very long story short, like I had left journalism because for a few reasons. One of them was that I was getting a bit burnt out. Another one was that I had met my now wife. And so I think that those two were kind of working in tandem with each other. I was kind of falling out of love with my job and falling in love with someone else. And she lived abroad, so that I had moved. But another reason was I had gone from journalism into marketing, which is kind of a cliche in the journalism world that a lot of former journalists go to PR or to marketing. And I started as a marketing writer because I was like, I'm a journalist. I love to write. That's a clear, obvious path. But I realized from marketing writing that what I loved about journalism wasn't particularly the writing aspect of it, but the storytelling aspect of it. Like, I loved standing in those lines at the rallies, the political rallies, and getting a bunch of people's stories, what they cared about, and making a story out of it. What's the headline? What's the main thing that people need to get out of this? And so I kind of carry that now into community management, where I'm just having conversations with users all of the time and figuring out what's the main story here? What should we care most about? What's the headline? So Riverside had reached out to me about a community management role, and I'd never even heard of it before. And as I was reading about it and learning about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so suited for what I love to do and where my passions are. So it seems like a crazy pivot. Where did that come from? But when I think about it that way, it's a little bit more fitting, more understandable how that would happen.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like the storytelling theme, like if in your life, it seems like that's sort of the thread that's going through these different roles. So it's cool. I mean, I wasn't always a marketer. I think most marketers didn't start off.
Most of us are not. Yeah.
Or we didn't study marketing, right? And I live in Taiwan, so I studied international studies and global, things. But I think I definitely resonate with you in terms of stories and understanding. For me, it was history and understanding that, but also that's how you understand people. It's all about people and making connections with individuals. So
yeah,
it really resonates with me.
I think that those make the best marketers. I mean, I think that when you look at marketing like a story or understanding other people's stories. I think that that makes the best way to speak to people and to understand them. So yeah, that's it's cool that you also kind of have that background.
Absolutely. So, okay, since we're talking about stories, and obviously Riverside is one tool to help people tell stories, what I'm most interested as a marketer is how can we do things, well, say a marketer in a small team, okay? How can we do
Yes.
things that may seem in the past you needed huge corporate teams and lots of video editors to really tell stories, especially to tell stories in a video format. So, we're going to deep dive into how we can do this, but do you have any maybe, surprising things you've seen, ways people are using Riverside that wouldn't have been able to be done 1 year ago, 3 years ago because, budgets are smaller, but also we're just able to do a lot more creative things. So just any stories that come to mind or people using Riverside in cool ways that are new?
Yeah, so I think that when people think of Riverside, if you've heard of it before, a lot of people think about podcasting. And podcasting is like, it's a really incredible way for your brand to get themselves out in front of more people, to really humanize yourselves. So podcasting is just definitely a good use case, but it's not the only one. I mean, I have people in the community that are recording their conversations, like their meetings internally with CEOs or with other people in their company, maybe the CMO, somebody like that, and talking about where they see the future going, let's just say, as an example, the future in their industry, and clipping that up and creating clips for that for social media. So one thing that it does is it starts a conversation online. But another thing that it does is it really humanizes your brand. Like, we are people, we're having these conversations. It's for LinkedIn especially, it's really great for their profiles to be able to have those conversations and put themselves out there. So that's something that's been really cool that we're seeing. And another thing is webinars or other live type of events. Like, you don't need a editing team anymore to be producing that. So in the past, it's been you can record a webinar or another type of live event, and then you have to have your video editor chop it up. You know that video editors always have a ton on their plate. For example, I did a webinar last night, recorded on Riverside. I edited it myself, so I don't need to be a professional editor to do that. I just edited it myself. It created the show notes for me. I could take the transcript and put it into ChatGPT and create newsletters, blog posts, like a ton of content from that. And that's just me. So I don't even need a huge team to do that. I can do it independently. So those are just a few like quick examples. We can dive into any of them,
Yeah.
but those are just some things that I've been seeing.
So recently I talked to Nathan Thompson from Copy AI, and he was talking about
Yes.
how he does a similar thing where he takes a transcript and then you can create, you can also take the video as well, and you just snip it up into a lot of different types of content. So I know that you recently also spoke with Emily Kramer about this topic of repurposing content. So that's kind of what you just mentioned, taking one
Yes.
main piece and then you take it and break it down. Do you have any tips for people who may think, okay, this seems like it's a huge task, things that maybe you use to make it easy for you?
Yes. So I would say that like one thing that people can do is create a podcast for your company. That could be a podcast, that could be a webinar. Like, there has to be your kind of like bottom foundational piece of content. And from there, what you can do with that is you can create those clips, those video clips. Social algorithms are really favoring video. And I also say live because social algorithms are really favoring live right now. Like, we get the notifications on Instagram, so-and-so is going live right now. So you want to play towards what the kind of content that they want to push out. But let's say that you're doing a podcast. And I say podcast because it creates this kind of authenticity for your company. It creates conversations, like you can have a long form conversation, but also there's a lot of trust that comes with that. If I see a company that has a podcast about the thing that I care about, maybe I'll listen to it organically and then start to kind of look into this company. But maybe it just is like, I want to be a client. I can actually hear the people that I'd be working with, get an idea of what they're all about. So creating a podcast could be your foundational piece of content. From there, you can create clips. I mean, Riverside has an AI tool that just creates the clips for you. You could also do it yourself. I do them myself because I really like the editing process, even though I'm not an editor. It really makes it fun to do. And then what I do is I take the transcript. So when you record in Riverside, you get your full AI transcript. And I put that in a ChatGPT and ask it, create a social media plan. out of this from this transcript. Create a newsletter from this transcript. Create blog posts from this. I even go so far, if I'm going live, I'll download the live chat and say, pull out the best quotes from this chat and create like a teaser for your next episode or your next webinar, having people in the chat be like, oh my gosh, I learned so much from this. Thank you. It really makes people feel like I want to join the next one. So those are kind of starting off points. I will put a huge caveat and say that unless you've really trained ChatGPT to speak in your brand voice, you're going to get something that doesn't maybe sound like you, and that's okay. I always just use it as a jumping off point. So I will take the quotes that they identified and maybe use different ones, or maybe use some of them. I'll take the blog post and rewrite it, but keep that same kind of structure. So it's never been easier to create that content, like the repurposed content, and you can fill up an entire calendar out of it. Like that repurposing webinar that you just mentioned with Emily Kramer. Like we have so many quotes from it. That's just 1 hour of recording that like our social team has enough for the entire month. Like we have at least 2 posts a month, or 2 posts a week for the rest of the month out of one 1 hour conversation. So it seems like a lot of work, but it makes it a lot easier. And then you have a theme for your month as well.
Absolutely. This is one of the reasons why I'm calling this a content series, The Marketers Do Coffee. But it's essentially a podcast, or it's a core piece of content that you can use that's genuine. We're talking about real things. We're real people talking about our experiences. So ChatGPT can't replicate that as a source material, at least not yet. So we're getting this authentic content. Do you have any tips for people on how to create a quality piece of source content, so a quality webinar? Because I think that really makes a difference in terms of the content you reproduce. Is that going to be useful for you?
So I think that a webinar is a lot about the host and the guests. So I say the host because you want to have good guests. Like you want to have good guests that are going to get the word out about your event, that people are intrigued by, that they want to hear from. But I think that the worst webinars are ones that it's like, you can tell it's just questions. It's a list of questions. There's not a conversation. So I was at like a webinar a few months ago where every time that we'd answer the question, it'd be like, great. And our next question is,
right.
That's not dynamic. Like that's not a conversation. You're also not going to get me loosened up from it and have those quotes and that authenticity that you're looking for. So you want to have somebody that's able to direct the conversation, like a marketer that knows where you want the conversation to go. But you want to be able to be loose with it and have an idea of the questions. Like have a list of things that you'd like to ask, but flow with the conversation, because then you're able to get that's when I think you get these really great moments. I also think that it's about deeply knowing your audience. And that's part of the thing with community marketing. So I know what people that are using Riverside care about and what they're struggling with. So the repurposing webinar, for example. I went to the podcast show last year. It's a conference in London. And everybody was talking about like, I know I need to be creating clips. I know I need to be repurposing, but it's my next step. It's just so hard. Like take that, bottle it, put it in a webinar, you know? So deeply understanding your audience, knowing the topic and then the questions to ask, and then preparing for an authentic conversation. Rethink webinars as almost podcasts in a way. Like it's a conversation and you want people to be able to take away actionable tips from it. That should be number one. But you also want people to feel like they're sitting in on a conversation rather than your Q&A.
Yeah. I kind of think of it like you want someone to be feeling like they overheard something of like two, professionals talking about something that they are really expert in, or, it's like you're a fly on the wall. I like to think of it that rather than reading a list of questions and answers, because that's boring.
A seat at the table rather than a seat in the audience.
Yeah, that could have been a blog post. If it was a Q&A, you could just send that by email,
Exactly. And you can also when you're talking about that, people like to digest different content different ways. So why not have a blog post, but then have your webinar at the top of it? Being able to have somebody more and more news articles are having the written format. And then there's also the listen to this article, because some people would rather listen, some people would rather read. So if you're able to mix up your content, and it could be the same exact thing, but one person might read the blog article, another person might watch the video.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I do want to recommend one resource that I found useful recently. It's a book called Stop Asking Questions. Because you mentioned the host being a person that is really basically pivotal in making sure the webinar is on track, it stays interesting. So this book, Stop Asking Questions, I found really helpful. If you're not sure, how can you elicit the best nuggets? I could call them nuggets. The most interesting pieces from conversations. How can you deep dive and go a little deeper sometimes if someone says something interesting? They usually say something at surface level, and you have to go a little bit deeper to get that really interesting nugget. So for those of you out there, check that book out. I thought it was quite helpful for me. Yeah, I do want to go into the aha moments. I think you mentioned aha moments, or like basically you're trying to get these aha moments, which is in essence could become the clips that you use or the clips that you share, those 30-second, videos. I know AI can do this, but you said you do it yourself. Is there anything that you look for or like patterns that you see that are in common with like aha moments, like what sticks out? Anything come to mind?
So I think for me, it's about, again, deeply knowing your audience. Like I always say that it's your job as a host to ask the questions that your listeners are asking. This is for podcasting, but this could be for webinars or anything else, marketing. Like, you need to think about who has their headphones on and would want you to ask that follow-up question, would love that one moment. That's how you need to be kind of listening when you're hosting or when you're looking back at a video and deciding what to clip. So it involves a lot of deep audience understanding. For that, I really, really recommend, when I started at Riverside, my first order of business was I got on calls with users every day. Like, I have a Calendly link that people can book to speak with me. And I also sometimes in the community will say, hey, I'm taking office hour calls, and people will just they want to speak with me. I want to speak with them. And then I can learn a lot more about them. Plus, those people usually interact more with our brand afterwards. So it's great. Like, that's a hack that I do. As far as those aha moments, I think that it's understanding what your audience will care about, one. But two, it could also be a humanizing moment. Like, we created a clip for Emily Kramer, and she was like, my name's Emily. Some people call me Emily. Some people call me Kramer. We made a clip that had her title under it that says Emily, then it changed to Kramer, then it changed to Emily. And it was just a funny moment, taking those funny types of moments. Or during that webinar, Ross Simmons was talking about his book, and it was right next to him. And Emily made a joke being like, buy Ross's book. And it's just funny, those kinds of moments that's what it's all about also. You want to get the aha moments that are nuggets that people can take away, but I wouldn't underestimate the moments of levity that really are something that your audience might laugh along with, or just might be something that sticks out to them as a funny, humanizing moment.
That's a really good way to put it, because I think we, as marketers, we tend to stick on the what pain points are we solving, and the really hard stuff. But I think, as you said, we're humans, and those human moments, they can really go a long way to help your brand, but also just be something that's sort of a pattern interrupt in your feed. It's not something super heavy. It's easy to digest, and it's fun.
Yeah, we have our posts that do the best aren't the ones that are save the time editing, because everyone talks about, oh, it takes so much time. That's a pain point. So the ones that really drive home those pain points aren't the ones that get the most attention. We posted something that was podcasters 20 minutes into the episode, and then it's a quote being all right, let's just jump right into it. And there's a funny call out moment that other people can relate to, and that was our top interacted with post. Relate to the people. It's about relating to the people that are using your product, rather than thinking so stringent, so, I don't know, rigidly about what are their pain points, what are their goals. It's relate to them, feel like you are them,
I think in terms of a content strategy, I think you want to be helpful and have those helpful pain point type of things, but you also want to be entertaining, or you want to be relatable, relate to people as a person. So I think they both serve a purpose. You can't do all memes all day, but memes do serve a purpose.
That's not what I mean? That's not what I'm
yeah.
saying. I'm saying that I'm saying that the idea that we all pain points don't need to be always framed in the way that we think about them. Pain points can be that I know that people struggle with editing. So when I'm asking questions, being what's the hardest thing about editing, and how did you get over that? Keeping those in mind, but reframing them in a way that's relatable, and in ways that elicit more of an authentic conversation, rather than we can solve this issue for you. you
These are
know?
the 5 ways you can. Yeah, exactly. And by
Exactly.
the way, I'm a fan of memes. I do 1 to 2 a week. I was just joking because it reminds me of the people who are against memes and say, oh, B2B is not about entertainment. But at the end of the day, we're humans and we want to smile, we want to laugh. Like it does work.
And it's also about human connection, I think. I think that like something that my mother actually told me when I was first applying for jobs. She's like, yes, you need to be talented and you need to be good at what you do and you need to be professional. But another thing is that you also want people to want to work with you every day, that they want to go to the office and you be at one of those desks. You know, like that's also a drive. And I think that's also for businesses. You answer those people's pain points, but also so that you have those human qualities that people want to work with you and interact with you and are proud to use your product, you know? So
Yeah, absolutely. It makes your brand, whether it's a personal brand or your actual, company brand, it makes it more magnetic and less pushy when you do create that content. Because as you said, people want to be with you. They want to work with you. They want to use your product, whatever it is. So I definitely
and they want to
agree.
talk about you too. Like they want to, if they're connected with you and feel like they're a part of something and feel like they just love your brand ethos, like they'll tell their friends about it. Like when somebody says, what are you using to podcast? It's not just, oh, I'm using Riverside. It's like, I use Riverside. I love it. They have these webinars too, where they can help you become a better podcaster. Like give people as many chances as you can to be like to be loyal to you, to love rather than just use your product.
Yeah, you don't want them to feel meh about your product or
Yeah,
about
and
you,
it's
as
about
you said.
inspiring that love instead of just like oh, it's a tool that I use. Like what can you do to make them love your product, which involves sometimes making them love your team, which involves video and putting yourselves out there.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn specifically because I'm very active on LinkedIn, both personally and for our company. We have a few people active. If you have people who know they need to kind of start either their companies, they need to grow their company's page or their own LinkedIn, do you have any tips specific that maybe you found useful or anyone you've noticed specifically useful for LinkedIn?
So for LinkedIn, I would say one, like trying out video. Try out a bunch of different things for yourself when you're first starting. So that can be like a list of your favorite tools that you use, for example. That could be a video of you talking about something that's interesting to you in the industry. Trying out those different content forms, that would be one tip. Another would be that asking questions to people and interacting with them. So for example, like use it as a place to create conversation. What's everyone seeing as a trend that's coming up in 2025 for podcasting? And having people want to jump into those conversations. Another thing that I would recommend is jumping into other people's conversations. And I mean that by commenting, but also by reaching out if somebody has a podcast in your niche. If somebody is hosting webinars and you think that you could be a good guest, like I've gotten so many more connections because I've appeared on other people's webinars, podcasts, channels, AMAs, those types of things. And people are there like looking for connections. So if you can put yourself in front of them and say, hey, like serve it on a platter. Like, hey, I am Kendall. I'm a community marketer at Riverside. I would love to talk with you about community. I saw that you were talking about community marketing or that you were talking about another type of marketing. I think community is such a cool new thing in the industry. Would you want to talk about it sometime? Great. Like, that's how I think that a lot of people go into it, like wanting to make more followers and seeing it that way. But if you treat it like you're making human connections, actually talking with people, creating conversations, putting yourself out there, then that's kind of the sweet spot, I would say. But like if you're starting out, try a little bit of everything and see what sticks for your brand. There's not going to be like a one size fits all. If you're not a big video person, then it's going to show on your videos. Like then I know there's a creator in our community that watches webinars and summarizes them. And she's gotten a ton of followers just because like she takes the best nuggets from every webinar and summarizes it into a post. And it's really smart. It's like, I watch this 1 hour webinar, so you don't have to. And if that's your niche, do that. there are tons of creative ways that you can make a name for yourself there.
I would agree with you need to kind of try what works for you first. So like, as you said, like you're trying out the formats or the things you feel comfortable doing. Maybe you'd be surprised. Video might be for you. You just think it wasn't. So like, you won't know until you try. I think that's one thing. And I think there's a fear some people have, like, I need to be an expert at this. And I think one reframe that can help a lot of people is you can just share your learnings. You don't have to share like, this for a fact. You can just share your process at work or things that you've been doing, or, hey, we tried out this thing. I think that's helped a lot of people on our team become more comfortable because they felt like, oh, there's that barrier. I can't post until I am that expert, but you become an expert by sharing and by continuing to learn. So that's one of the things that we found helpful.
I'll also just give a tip that if you're posting about tools, this is just like a small tip about tools, write a separate post for each tool. A company is much more likely to interact with your post, that brand, if it's just about them, because I can't tell you how many posts will have Riverside and then it'll mention that they like a competitor or like 5 other brands, and then you've kind of lost that opportunity for us to repost that, So if you're going to recommend something, make it a post that recommends just that, because otherwise you could lose out on the interactions with that.
That's a really great tip. And especially if you're looking to grow or you're looking to really genuinely get engagement, getting that repost from a brand or from a person is really helpful because it helps to spread, your post. So as you said, focus that post on one specific tool you use or one specific creator. So I tend to do that with, maybe you read a newsletter recently and you want to add to that conversation. Just talk about that newsletter and tag that person. Don't tag 10 people because they're less likely.
I was going to say the worst thing you could do is then say, there's also a blog post by this person and by this person. No. It's like you lose out on the opportunity. Yeah, exactly.
One post, one message, or one tool, one person. I tend to think that way.
Yes.
Okay, so we're running out of time. I want to make sure I get to all the good stuff. Okay, so I'm thinking about people who may be newer to content creation, and obviously I'm a big fan of Riverside. Can you talk a little bit more for those who don't understand how Magic Clips works and how it actually could be something that you do in maybe, an hour or 2 a week? It's not something that would have to be your full-time job. So think of someone who's new to this and someone who doesn't have a lot of time, how Riverside could really help them and, how it works.
So Riverside, for anyone who doesn't know, is we're an end-to-end content creation platform, and you can record there in high quality, you can edit right in the platform, and you can make these clips like you were just talking about. So the big thing about Riverside that's different from something like Zoom is that the quality that you're actually going to get is much higher when it comes to audio and video. So it's going to look so much more professional when you're putting your content out there, and that's so important in a world where there's so much video out there. You baseline, no matter what you're saying, even if it's the most inspired thing, if it's not a good video to look at or a good piece of audio to put in your ears on your headphones, you've lost that message. So baseline is just high quality audio and video. On top of that, you're able to create these clips. So what you can do is you can use Magic Clips, which is our AI tool that basically scans the transcript for the most engaging moments from your conversation, and already right away puts it into 9:16 if that's what you'd like. So you could do it for like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, and adds animated captions. You can add your logo and your other branding. The animated captions can be in your specific brand colors. So what we're doing is we know why and how people are using our platform, and we're making it so that you can go from record to having that output as quickly as possible. So for example, when you use those Magic Clips, you can set, like, here are my brand settings. For every clip that I make, I want it to be maybe 1x1 square format. I can put in my logo, say these are my brand colors, and I want to use this kind of style for the animated captions, and every single time it'll spit it out like that. It also means that you can go in, and this is an important thing for me when it comes to AI, you can still go in and change anything that you want. So it's not like these end all be all. It's because it's a creative process, because creating these clips is a creative process. It's like you want to be able to have that control, and so you still get that control. You can add backgrounds, you can add images, text overlays, and make it so that it's like an engaging video to watch. You can also, you can have 2 people side by side, switch it up to full frame, like make videos that really move, and you don't need any video editing experience to do it. So it's really never been easier to create these clips, especially using magic clips, but especially using Riverside.
I would definitely second that because I've been using, I've used several different tools. And obviously the reason that I wanted to speak with you is like, hey, I am a user and I do find value in your tool and in your product. The magic clips is like the first step. And like you said, the second step is still that creativity. Like you're still in control. It's not like AI is doing 100% and you just push a button and it's there. No, it just helps you get faster to that part where you can kind of fine tune, or you can make sure the hook is the strongest hook that you can create. It's helpful as a good mix of automation, but it gives you that flexibility to really do things that I'm not a video editor, but I can do things that I would want my video editor to do. So I really appreciate
Exactly. I saw a meme a couple of days ago, or like a quote that was like, I don't want AI to do my creative things faster so that I can have time for my dishes. I want AI to do the dishes so I have time to be creative. And that's like kind of how I see us going through AI with Riverside, is that we can get you faster to your end goal, but you still are able to go in and do part of the creative process that you love. You can switch up where the captions are. You can switch up where your logo is, where the in and out points are of your clips. Like that stuff is important for making sure that you have control and that you put out the best content and something that you're really proud of and love to watch yourself and that your audience loves to watch.
Exactly. And that's a really good point. You mentioned being proud of. I think that's one of the sort of unspoken rules in our team is like, we want to create content, no matter how much AI helps, we still want to be proud of what we put out there. And I think that that's the thing that people are sort of navigating these days. Like, yes, AI can do all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, we need to be the ones that stand behind it when we push publish and it goes out under our brand. And I think, Riverside and a lot of other tools are making it easy to navigate that balance.
Yeah, to make content that you can be proud of.
Yes, I love that. All right. Is there anything else you would like to share before we wrap up here, Kendall?
I would just say that if anyone here wants to try out Riverside, we do have a free plan that you can just give it a try and see how you like it. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. We could put the link in the show notes. But if you are getting into podcasting, I just have to plug the community that I manage, which is Conversation Creators by Riverside on Facebook. And we have 20,000 members that are they're marketers, they're podcasters, they're video creators. And it's such a supportive community if you're just getting started or if you want to up your game. Like, so many incredibly helpful people in there. So yes,
right here.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm a member. It is helpful just to see, are there questions other people have that you also have? It's a really useful resource. So yes, definitely join
Yay,
that
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
This was a lot of fun.